Welcome to Office Hours, June 3rd, 2020. This session is about analytics, reporting, and dashboard development done right. Exclamation mark, question mark. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we have an exclamation and a question mark. My name is David Van Houston, and I work in the product management team. So let me share three things I will be talking about in the coming minutes, after which I will give a short demo. I'm going to talk a little bit about in-platform and why it's not the same as external analytics, and the fact that reporting and analytics are part of in-platform and are not external analytics. I'm going to talk a little bit about analytics and why it's a team sport and not something you do alone. And I'm going to spend the most of the time on DTAP, or Development, Test, Acceptance, and Production, and its relationship also to production versus development. Okay, so as I just mentioned, analytics are part of the platform, right? And that gives huge benefits. As you can see, being part of the platform gives you access as you're building out your analytics and reporting solutions or your dashboards. It gives you great benefits because you're sharing the same platform, you're upgrading from version to version, making sure that all your work just basically stays intact and you don't have to go back and fix things as you upgrade. It has even more benefits because as you're basically expanding your applications and your processes, they immediately become available for analysis and reporting. If you're missing information, you can add metrics, whether that's metrics based on state durations, for example, or more SLA-related metrics because of agreements you have within the business or towards outside of the business. You can enrich the applications themselves if the information is not available in your reporting or analytics environment at that moment, right? Say that you have some information that you're not capturing, right? You'll have a hard time reporting on it or basically doing an analysis on that. Same as you would if you would export the information to an outside BI solution. Well, it's critical that you get that then in your application, right? You start capturing that information, and whether that's through a metric or whether that's an extra field inside the application, that is the discussion that you need to have. But once you're capturing that information, because you're part of the platform, it immediately becomes available for reporting and for analysis. And the biggest benefit from my perspective is always that it also becomes available in your standard forms, your standard lists. So you can basically find it even though you might not be doing any analysis on it, but it's part of your query mechanism, right? It's part of the form that you see. So I think that is a huge benefit. You can actually act on it. Why is analytics a team sport? Well, you can't do it alone, right? Maybe you're part of the business side of the house, right? Maybe you're requesting analysis or reports on a weekly or daily basis even, right? But you need to work together with the folks that have knowledge about analysis and reporting. You need to work together with the people who understand the platform and are able to basically create solutions on top of the platform, extend it when needed. You need to be able to work with the process owners, right, who understand the process, and also with the folks who are building the new applications or extending the existing ones. And together, you basically form that team in which you make up the building blocks for a solid analysis and reporting strategy, which in turn then turns itself into, let's say, the information that you would like to share through a dashboard. And the dashboards need to be built for a specific target audience, right? You could see that you build a dashboard for the manager or the leaders of a certain organization, let's say the incident managers or the in an agile world where you would be creating that for the engineering leaders who need an overview on all the work that's going around when building the applications, and when defects come in, they need to be on top of that. And in order to basically give these people the right tools to do their jobs more effectively, right, to drive to certain um, improvements, you might need to identify gaps in the current data architecture that will require some additional database views to be built, or some metrics to be included, or some scripts even to be added in order to make sure that the reports can be created or that the analysis can be done on those applications. In the end, all that work is done not in your production environment. Some of the work is done in the production environment, but a lot of work is not done in a production environment. It's done in your development environment. And in the larger organizations, right, you might even see that you have a development environment, a test environment, an acceptance environment, and a production environment, just to make sure that everything is nicely, let's say, siloed or kept separate to avoid, let's say, problems and issues from occurring from the development work being done. And as you move through that cycle, you need to do that through a certain way. Well, you're part of the platform, so you can use update sets to move from A to B, or from D to T to A to P. I will go a little bit more in details in the next slides. But if you want to know more about the analytics as a team sport and the governance questions that you need to ask yourself, and some of the tasks that you should be doing, have a look at that Office Hours by Dan Kane, which is not only a great view to see, but he also has an article written with a PDF that has all this information around how to set up a proper governed process around developing your dashboards and all the contents that make up. So have a look, and let's continue to DTAP. As I mentioned before, it's development, test, acceptance, and production. Some organizations basically do a lot in production, but every organization has at least development, right? And there are numerous organizations who also have a test environment then and an acceptance environment. And the way some organizations work is it moves from development to test to acceptance to production. So that's why it's called a DTAP street. Now, what's important with that DTAP? Well, if you take that governance session from Dan as a starting point, then there are certain things in the platform that you don't want to do in your production environment, because it might break the instance, a node, the performance, etc. So you typically do that in a non-production instance. So on the left-hand side, these are just examples, but they're common examples, right? And they're jobs to be done. So if you need to, for example, develop your forms field scripts, you do that in your development environment. If you want to create your initial indicator and breakdown sources, you should also do that in your development environment, right? You want to make sure that you're going to capture the right information, that the information is available, right? That you can actually create those indicators. And as you develop then the indicators and breakdowns on top of those indicator and breakdown sources, you typically can see that that's done in either development or development and or test, right? Because as soon as you've developed a certain, let's say, base set of indicator and breakdown sources and indicators and breakdowns, adding an additional one is not that much development work. Say that you're interested in state and priority and assignment group, and you've got that all captured in your development environment. Now, if you then want to add impact, for example, as an additional breakdown, do you really need to do that in development? No, you could also do that in your test environment as long as you start moving it. Some people will prefer to be, let's say, concise and keep everything when it's developed in the same instance. In that case, I would just say just keep it in development and just use testing for testing purposes. All right, as you move down the list, you can see that some of the jobs you can't really do in development. For example, running your historical jobs or a test job in order to populate the newly created indicators and breakdowns. You can't really do that in your development environment. You can, but you won't get most likely the accurate results because the instances are out of sync. Um, and you would want that information in your production environment anyway. So you might want to run a test in your test environment just to see that it doesn't break anything, right? That's why you do that piece all in development and test. But actually populating the scores tables, you do in production. All right, and why would you use an acceptance instance? Well, say that you have like you're a service provider and you have agreements with third parties and you need to accept together that you have some new content that basically maybe is an output of SLA metrics. You want to make sure that you both agree as to the outcomes, and that's what you would do in an acceptance instance. It's not production yet, it's an acceptance instance where you basically bring multiple parties together to accept, let's say, the outcomes of all the analytics and reporting work that you've done so far. Share a dashboard with appropriate users, right? This is like what we see as something that should be really easy and common, and that's been the investment also since the last couple of years into basically making it easy for users to share the information that's in the ServiceNow platform. As long as you have certain rights, and they're very minimal, you can just create a dashboard and share that with another user. The content itself that's on the dashboard, right? You could govern that very strictly. So again, go back to Dan's office hours and review that governance. Because as long as you make sure that the content itself that's in the instance available for your end users to place on a dashboard is strictly governed, then you're not running a risk that there's like uncontrollable information being shared to someone that you're not aware of, right? That's how you would control the narrative, so to speak. All right, and below you see some other with some asterisks as well. Sometimes it's difficult, right? Like targets and thresholds, as long as you have the rights and they're very personal, you can't do this in development. You can't develop the targets and the thresholds really well in development because they depend on the person using the information to basically, let's say, drive towards a certain goal, right? He or she might have an objective where he says, I want to drive down the number of open cases. And I'm going to set a target for my team, myself, some business service, etc. That depends on the breakdown and the element, etc. And that's why, that you can't really do that easily in targets and thresholds, and why that should be on production. Okay. Some important notes about successfully making sure that, or not successfully, but just making sure, good practice to have a dashboard and all of the contents added to an update set. You must always use the unload dashboard functionality when you're creating or modifying a dashboard. And I will demonstrate that in the demo to come. It's important. It's a functionality that you find in the dashboard properties, and I will demonstrate that. You have to be aware that only the records that are on or directly related to the dashboard will be added to the current active update set. So if you have related records, let's say you're adding a widget about the number of open cases over the last couple of weeks to your dashboard, then that widget itself, which is the container, and the dashboard, those would be added to the update set. But the actual indicator underneath that widget, that one will not just be added to the update set. You will need to make sure that you touch that or add that to the update set. So that's important, right? So if you're developing your dashboard and you're thinking that automatically all of the underlying content, including the breakdowns and the related information, like the maybe the people that you've shared that with, if that information you have not captured also in that update set, it's not going to be part of the dashboard. And okay, it needs to be in the instance that it's going to, right? So records that are part of the related record reference are not added. So this is like the example that I just gave. So it's indicator definitions, breakdown definitions, filter definitions, but also the people that you may or may not have shared or excluded it to, right? So that's important to know. If those people are not in the instance you're going to move this update set to, it's not going to work. And there you go. Records like user groups are also not added to the update set. And a good practice is to avoid issues is to make sure that you have an administrator basically working together with the folks that are creating the dashboard and move that dashboard from instance to instance. So final takeaways before I move on to the demo. Analytics and reporting is in platform, and it's not the same as external BI solutions. Work together as a team, not as an individual. Make sure you start simple and expand beyond that. So start, for example, with the governance document, lay out some clear baseline rules, who's allowed to do what in your production instance and who's allowed to do what in your development instance. Make sure you understand that there's needs, like the ability for the reporting and analysis creators to ask for things like, hey, we need this information. What's the best way where we can add that, either through adding an extra field into an application table, or by adding a metric or an SLA metric even, or maybe a database view. And so that needs to exist. Do that in a production versus development environment. Just keep the two separate. Say, this is where we do development work and this is where we do production work. And make sure that you plan ahead. So think about milestones that you would like to create. Are you going to do that using, let's say, for example, sprints? So you could divide all the work up in sprints and say, hey, let's have 2-week sprints, and we could have 4 releases per year, or maybe 12 releases per year, or maybe 24. Plan ahead and communicate that with the rest of the team. All right. Before I dive into the demo, here are some references links. I will make sure that this presentation is posted into an article on the community, so you can just click the links. It's about adding dashboards to an update set, team development, instance data replication, and something that we need your help on, and that's on what other office hours topics we should cover. Okay, so I will dive now into the demo, and I wanted to thank you for watching this piece of the office hours, and make sure that you connect with us on the community pages. Let's move on to the demo. Before we dive into the demo, I want to point you to a lab that we created for Knowledge 2020, and that I will use as a, let's say, a source for demonstrating moving update sets from a development instance to a production instance. So I will briefly go through the lab, and the benefit is for you that you can actually subscribe yourself to the lab, enroll in it, and then do the lab and basically do the same thing that I was doing, although I have two different instances. So you will need to enroll twice. I'm not sure actually if you can do that, but you could give it a try. But at least the benefit is that you could basically repeat all the steps that I did in order to change the dashboard, create the update set, and then for sure you can move it out using export to XML. But if you're able to have another instance and you're able to use team dev, which we will be using to basically move update sets from one instance to another, then you can move that update set that you will be creating. All right, so let's talk about the lab. The lab is lab 1128, so that's lab 1128, as you can see here. And it's about telling a story with dashboards and with reporting, especially reporting. So reports on a dashboard. It gives you a brief introduction, so you can start it. It comes with a full video, and as I said, once you enroll in it, you will also, of course, you need to sign in. But once you enroll in it, you will get an instance assigned to you, so you will receive an email with the instance, so you can actually do the entire lab on a pre-configured instance, and it's totally free. All right, I'm not going to go through all of the points. I just want to make sure that I point you to modifying an existing dashboard, because that's actually what we're going to do. So we're going to sign in and we're going to open the CIO instant dashboard, and then we're going to make some changes. So to make sure that we basically capture some changes of an existing dashboard. I'm not going to go through the entire exercise, but as you can see, it points you to doing the exercise, which I will be doing shortly, and I will just make some changes. So it sort of looks like this, but not entirely, because it's out of the scope of this demo. Okay, so I've got two instances. I've got a prod instance, as you can see here. So it says production, and I'm in the dashboard tab, and I have my development instance. And right now, if I point you to the production instance, and I go to dashboards, there should be a CIO dashboard. So if I look for CIO, then it actually finds the current CIO dashboard. So this is all pre-installed, comes with the instance from the lab, and has the basically the example CIO dashboard that you should be changing in the lab. The same is true for the development instance. So if I go to dashboards, and I also search for CIO in all, obviously, don't forget, right? It's defaults to recent, so you need to search in all. And it also has that same CIO dashboard with the same look and feel. All right, before we dive in and start changing the dashboard, we need to take a look at team development. All right, team development has a set of instances, right? And you basically connect your remote instances in the remote instances section. I have a team dashboard, right? And I need to make sure that I basically pull all the necessary changes that are happening on production to make sure that my development environment is in sync. Typically, you actually don't use push and pull from production to development, at least not in the good practice documentation that we hand out. You actually use update sets to move changes. But in this case, the example basically works because my two instances are in so close sync that doesn't matter. And you can see that then I don't have any thing to reconcile. I'm fully up to date. I just hit the refresh to make sure. Okay, I'm good. So I'm going to make sure that I have an update set. And in order to see my update set, I will just go to the developer tab on my system settings. I will open the application picker so I can see what application I'm in at the moment, right? If I'm using a scoped application or whether I'm working in global. At this point, I'm working in global, and it defaults to the default update set. And I can actually go in, but I want to make sure that I create a update set that is not default, because that obviously has already some changes, 1624 to be exactly, that are in progress, and I just want to capture the changes that we're going to do now. So I'm going to go to local update set, and it helps if you do have a basic understanding of update sets. So be sure to go to Now Learning and look for the ServiceNow fundamentals, and even the ServiceNow administrator path. And just do that, right? It's actually free, and yes, it takes you basically the ServiceNow administrator fundamentals takes you like 2 days, but it's virtual, right? So you can plan it as you want, and the added benefit is that you could basically take an exam and become a ServiceNow admin, certified ServiceNow admin, with little extra effort. Okay, I'm just going to ignore this existing one. Okay, this in progress is fine. I'm just going to create a new update set, and I'm going to call that CIO dashboard update V1. There you go. I'm going to submit and make current, and now I can see that at the top my update set goes to CIO dashboard, and I'm system admin at the moment, right? Typically you would maybe have another user that's doing the work, and you could do that, but making sure that your system admin or someone with system admin rights sets the right update set. That's important. And there's two ways basically of proper development. Say that I'm a typical user with some extra rights, like Beth Angling is, which comes out of the assignment, and I log in. Beth doesn't have any knowledge or visibility to update sets. She just wants to make sure that the dashboards are the best there is, and so she wants to make sure that this dashboard, which she owns, is just a little bit better than it was. There was some feedback with the business, so she's going to make some changes. All right. So actually, one of the changes is that you're going to resize and move some of the widgets. So we'll just go ahead and create a new tab, and I think it's called the Trend tab. And actually, what they do is in the lab they move some of the trends away from this page, and they move the scores up, resize them a little bit, and as you can see, I'm happily making changes to this environment. Just gonna see if it styles a little bit. I'm just gonna make this one a little bit bigger, and then this one can also go so it's roughly all the same size. Actually, I want to switch these around because I'm more interested in critical open incidents than I am in the total number of open incidents, because I can hardly can do something about that, but I want to make sure that my critical incidents are close to 0 or even 0. All right. So let me just go in, make some changes, and this one can also be this size. So, all right, I made some changes, and I just need to add a report to this tab. And it was called like good one. I can't remember what it's called, and it's definitely not by me, so let me just open this one up and just open the all incidents by caller location. Yep, that one to be added. And I think that's fine for now. It will prove its point. So created an extra tab, added a widget, an existing one, right? We're just making updates here to existing information. And what I am going to do is I'm going to make a change to this underlying record to also point something out. I see that there is a legend, which we don't really need because it's not really helpful at this point in time. Then we save the report and go back to the dashboard. So we now no longer have a legend. We can just hover over and see the scores. And the same goes here for the other one, but I will not do that right now. Okay, so I think we're done from a Beth standpoint, and as I said, teamwork is important. So Beth gives a call to the system admin, maybe through hey, I'm done with the dashboard. Could you move it to production, please? We're cutting a little bit of corners here because first you obviously want to test a little bit. So I log out. And the system admin gets a message from Beth saying that she's done with production. So, okay, I'm going to check the update sets. My CIO dashboard. Okay, as system admin, I can see that there is a bunch of deletes as well. So apparently we're also deleting some some of the widget containers on the dashboard tab. So each of them there's several components in the dashboard as explained during the presentation, right? So you don't only have the contents of the dashboard, but also some frames, some holders, placeholders where the actual widget is placed in, and they belong to the dashboard. And that's what you see here. They actually get moved or updated. So there's 16 updates here, and one, just wanted to point that out, is because Beth had access to the report and she made a change to the report. That report change is also captured, and the report is added to the update set, right? It's not that the report was added to the dashboard because it was part of the dashboard. No, it was because it was updated by Beth. That's why it's ending up here in the update set. Okay, there's one thing that I didn't do yet, and that you need to do as an administrator or someone with rights to the dashboard, and that's unload your dashboard. So let's just see what happens if I move this now from this instance as an update to my production instance, which doesn't have some of the artifacts, right? It doesn't have the tab, it doesn't have the change to the report, and it doesn't have the changes to the first tab. So I'm going to say, okay, Beth said that it was done, so let's complete it, right? And we'll save it, and we'll finish it up over here. And then we'll move to our production instance, where in team development, I can go to my remote instances. And I can say, all right, let's retrieve all completed update sets. There's one here, and there was one already committed. So there's my CIO dashboard update version 1. It's previewed, and oops, there's 3 errors. There's 3 errors, and that's a grid canvas pane, a grid canvas, and a PA tabs, all missing records. All right, so I can't really do anything with this now because I'm not going to be able to correct this unless I understand what went wrong. And the one thing that we didn't do in our development instance was unload the dashboard. And that's why that is the critical missing piece here. So I'm going to go back to my development instance. And I'm going to go back make it my current. And I'm just going to reuse this right now because it hasn't actually been moved from this development instance to anywhere else. So I know no changes have taken place that needed to be captured in this update set. So that's why I can just reopen it, put it in progress, make sure that it's current, and then ask Beth to see if she can unload the dashboard for me. So logging in as Beth, and say, Beth, you do need to unload that dashboard that you just changed. So when you're done with your changes on your dashboard, I could have sent her a message. And that's in dashboard properties. So she opens dashboard properties, and then under the menu, there's unload dashboard. So Beth does see, all right, I unloaded the dashboard. Sorry. Now we go back into as system admin. So I go back to my update sets. I check my current dashboard, and I can see that indeed I have a number of records added. So I now have 26 records that are part of this update set. So that seems to be better than it was before. And hopefully that will resolve any of the issues that we have. I see now the portal pages that are there. So, okay, let's try it again. Go back to prod. Okay, obviously I need to redo this, so I'm just gonna there it is again. Should contain the new updates. All right, and then there's one update where it says, hey, I have a sysportal page, but actually the local one is newer than this one. So that could be because the one that's coming from the development instance was touched earlier than the one in system, or there is just a minor discrepancy between the two. However, you know that the one from development, that's the one that Beth basically signed off on and said, yep, this is the one that we want. So we're going to accept the remote update. And we're going to commit the update set. And then we're going to ask Beth to basically check in production, obviously, whether her dashboard is what it's supposed to be. Let's search for my CIO dashboard. Indeed, I see my changed CIO dashboard in production, and my report has also changed. So this is an example of how you can successfully use Team Dev to move your update sets from development to production and make sure that you do development a bit more governed and that you avoid certain pitfalls. So unload dashboard to make sure that all the artifacts belonging to the dashboard are part of the update set. That is a critical piece. Once you create new artifacts, like a new report, etc., you also have to make sure that they are part of your update set, right? If you create new reports and they are existing in development, but they're not in production, and you forgot to add them to the update set that contains the dashboard, you're going to get error messages because the report will not be in your production environment. So you then also need to make sure that you capture that update in the same update set of the dashboard, or you have to make sure that the report is already in production before you create a dashboard with that report. Having said that, I hope that this was interesting to you and that you found it useful. And last but not least, don't forget to check out the lab 1128 if you want to redo what you just saw in the brief demo. I'm going to add some more links for you to learn about administration or update sets in general, but also about dashboards and unloading and what you need to think of, and when you run into issues, what you should be doing or what you should be looking at. So thanks again, and until next time.